We're going to be talking about making good personal protective equipment choices to help reduce the harmful effects that are caused by pesticide exposure. We'll first talk about data that place private pesticide applicators at high risk of pesticide exposures, and then highlight commonly used PPE materials for protecting workers, pesticide handlers, and pesticide applicators. And then we'll discuss understanding PPE requirements on pesticide labels, and then making good PPE choices in the presence of pesticides. So, agriculture by far applies the most pesticides in general. We take up about 90% of pesticides usage in the United States. And within that, herbicides are the biggest type to be applied. Now, considering that the agricultural sector is the one that's applying everything and handling everything, we're the most likely to be exposed to pesticides and have problems afterwards. So we're going to be talking about how we can avoid those issues and how we can protect ourselves because we're the most at risk here. So pesticides are absorbed differently based on the part of the body that it hits. And this is based on a study that looked at one single pesticide application, which was parathion with an acetone solvent that was not in a formulation. So this is after 24 hours, what percentage was taken up by that part of the body. So our more thick-skinned areas don't take up a whole lot. Consider our forearms, for example. Our forearms only take up 9% of what it's exposed to. Our palms are a little higher with 12, and our feet are about 14, and our abdomen are 18. But other areas of the body take up a much higher percentage. Are almost 12 times as much pesticide was absorbed through the scrotum compared to the forearm. So the genital area takes up almost 100% of anything that it's exposed to. So this is why our personal protective equipment is so important, because not everything is absorbed the same way. So taking those hazards into consideration, the EPA developed minimal requirements for personal protection for agricultural workers, pesticide applicators, and other pesticide-related handlers. Restricted use pesticides are classified according to their level of toxicity. For a product that is moderately toxic, the minimum requirements for PPE are a long sleeve shirt, long pants, shoes and socks, protective eyewear, and chemical-resistant gloves. This illustration shows the difference in minimum PPE required for an applicator, which is on the left, compared to a mixer and loader, which is on the right. So you can see that our mixer and loader has an apron on, has a hat on, a respirator. You have chemical-resistant boots on, and as always, socks. It's very important to have socks on as well. I'm missing anything. So you have a few extra things that you have to have on when you're mixing and loading. Previously, we talked about PPE requirements are based on the level of toxicity of a pesticide. This information is quickly determined by the signal word on the pesticide label for a particular product. Highly toxic pesticides are defined by the danger or poison signal words. The warning signal word characterizes moderately toxic pesticides. And caution is used to describe slightly and relatively non-toxic pesticides. So in the next few slides, we'll talk about commonly used personal protective equipment and the types of material that will offer protection against pesticide exposure. Some labels will only provide general requirements for PPE, such as wear protective eyewear. Protective eyewear includes a variety of items that provide different levels of safety for protection for your eyes. For example, we have a face shield and safety goggles. And with those, you can have a potential for backsplash. Therefore, safety goggles or a full face respirator would be a better option to prevent backsplash when mixing and loading pesticides. Then we have our boots. So these need to be chemical resistant rubber work boots. You can also have a general description on your pesticide label for footwear, and it might be something like wear protective footwear. Chemical resistant rubber work boots, such as the brand showed here, usually offer quality protection for your feet. You also might want to get something with no slip tread. That way you're less likely to spill. And these boots are required for type 1 danger and type 2 warning pesticide toxicity categories. Next, we have hand and forearm protection. You might have another general description for PPE on the pesticide label. Protective gloves can be made out of different types of chemical resistant materials and can either be disposable or reusable. If it's reusable, they must be waterproof for washing and rinsing off any pesticide contamination. Another factor is often overlooked, which is the glove length. You need 13 inches, and that's often the standard length for pesticide protection when using or handling pesticides. However, if the label says something bigger than 13 inches, that's what you need to do because the label is the law. So this will be a pesticide label activity. Since this is a recording, we'll just look over the label and we'll talk about the important parts of it, and we'll go over different questions with it. So this is the gramoxone label or the paraquat label. So I want to point out the important parts of this label. And since we're talking about safety, we have our it says restricted use pesticide. So it can only be purchased by certified applicators, and it can only be applied by certified applicators as well. So that's the restricted use part. Then you go down here and you see a danger warning. Then you come over here and you have your precautionary statements, which is what personal protective equipment you need. This first part is for applicators and other handlers that are not mixers and loaders. Mixers and loaders are below. And so you have here long sleeve shirt and pants, shoes and socks, protective eyewear, chemical resistant gloves, which there's many different types labeled here, so you have options. And then a NIOSH approved particulate respirator or a powered air purifying respirator. Then we have mixers and loaders, and you'll have to wear everything that these guys wear, except you need a face shield and a chemical resistant apron as well. Then you have your agricultural use requirements, which are re-entries and what needs to be worn when you're doing a re-entry. Okay, so our first question. When mixing and loading gramoxone, what type of eye protection is needed? So these are the precautionary statements that we looked at earlier. And our proper protection for mixing and loading gramoxone is a face shield. Other less common forms of eye protection may also include a NIOSH approved full face mask, air purifying respirator, or powered particulate respirator. Both provide full face protection when mixing and loading this particular herbicide. Question 2. What type of respiratory protection is required when mixing and loading this product? I'll let you take a look. So, the type of respiratory protection required for mixers and loaders is a NIOSH-approved particulate respirator with any N, R, or P filter. NIOSH approval number prefix TC84A, or a NIOSH-approved power air purifying respirator with an HE filter with a NIOSH approval number prefix TC21C. Early entry workers need only wear long sleeve shirts, long pants, and shoes and socks for their outer garments. True or false? False. Early entry workers must also wear coveralls, protective eyewear, and chemical resistant gloves. Question 4. The REI for Harvest Aid and Desiccation applications is 12 hours. True or false? The answer is false. The restricted entry interval, or REI, is either 12 hours or 24 hours, but depends on the task. The question asked what the REI is for Harvest Aid and Desiccation applications, which is 24 hours. Question 5. Should drenched or heavily contaminated clothing be washed separately from other laundry? The answer is no. Drenched or heavily contaminated clothing should be discarded according to the manufacturer's directions. Question 6. The PPE requirements for mixing and loading are the same as it is for applying Gramoxone. True or false? False. They are not the same. What they have in common are long sleeve shirts and long pants, shoes and socks, protective eyewear, chemical resistant gloves, and a NIOSH approved respirator. The difference is that mixing and loading requires a chemical resistant apron and face shield. That's the end of the presentation, and I hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day.